What is going on, guys? Pat in the shop, and tonight we're adding cheap horsepower to our L31 budget build. Let me show you some of this carb spacer testing we did when we had this bad girl in the dyno. Let's check it out. So our L31 low buck build here did quite well, making about 410 horsepower and about 415 foot-pounds of torque, and we revved this thing up just past 6,000 RPM, which I thought was pretty good for a low-rise dual plane intake like we have here. The thing was, the expectations were already met early in the day, and obviously us being guys on the dyno, we kept just striving for more and more horsepower. Luke and I had a lot of fun, and one of the things we tested were carb spacers. We tried 4-hole, we tried tapered combos, also known as a super sucker, and we tried open spacer of different thicknesses. I don't have any open spacers here because they're either at the shop or I left one of them at Luke's actually. So I wanted to just go over the results with you, and I wanted to show you something that we found on this engine that worked really well. Maybe this is something you guys have never seen before, or maybe it's something that some of you guys have tried, but it's not really a contemporary thing to do with this spacer, so it might be pretty interesting to some of you guys that thought about maybe trying this. So let's go over the results. We're going to start with a 4-hole spacer. When it comes to carb spacers, the engine combination in the manifold will make a difference, a big difference, especially going from a dual plane intake like this to a single plane. The results we get here will not typically be the same when it comes to a single plane intake. So just keep that in mind if you have a single plane. These results are really mostly for dual plane intake. The results even could be different when you have a higher rise dual plane intake with maybe a center cut divider. So this is a pretty basic low rise dual plane intake with a non-cut center divider. So just keep that in mind, and your results may be different, but it's one of those things without testing you really don't know for sure with carb spacers, but these results are pretty interesting, and they should lead you in a direction that will help you if you're running a similar combination. Another thing to keep in mind when you're doing carb spacers, carb spacers and carb jetting go hand in hand. If your carb is perfect with jetting with no spacer, as soon as you add a spacer, the carb jetting will change. Typically with a 4-hole spacer, you get a little bit more signal to the booster, a little more pull. The engine will run rich with a 4-hole spacer. When it comes to open spacers or tapered combos like we have here, typically the engine will run lean and you'll have to add jet to compensate for the change of the signal to the carburetor. So just keep that in mind, that you can't always just slap a spacer on and have good results. Jetting and tuning has to come hand in hand. Timing didn't change. We end up keeping the timing the same once we found the optimal timing, but just keep in mind that jetting will change depending on what carb spacer you're going with. So let's roll into a 4-hole spacer and let's see what kind of results we've got on our L31 budget build. So the classic 4-hole spacer, we have a 1-inch here, we end up running a 1/2 inch as well. The classic 4-hole spacer on our dual plane intake didn't do a whole lot. Kind of the classic trade-off you get with the 4-hole spacers. Oftentimes you'll pick up a little bit of low-end torque with the trade-off of a little bit of top-end power. But we're talking on this thing, believe it or not, actually the 1/2 inch 4-hole spacer was better than the 1-inch. And I'll throw a graph up here comparing the two. Really not much different. A couple foot-pounds of torque. The best we made was 417 torque, but we lost about a horsepower and a half at the top end, making about 407.5. So we lost a couple horsepower at the top end. It did make the carb run about a 1/2 point to 3/4 of a point richer. So just remember that if you're running a 4-hole, so if you had a perfect air-fuel ratio, it was about another 1/2 point richer, so you would have to take jet out of the carburetor to make this run the same versus no spacer. So just keep that in mind, but in this combination with the dual plane intake, and that's pretty typical, the 4-hole spacer really wasn't doing a whole lot for us, and like I said, you're going to see the comparison of the 1/2 inch to the 1-inch, and the 1/2 inch was actually slightly better. Next up, we have the open spacer. I don't have one here with me right now, and I left one of the ones we ran on this thing at the dyno shop at Luke's, but the 1-inch open spacer showed good top end power results, which is pretty typical of an open spacer on a dual plane. So we were able to pick this thing up to about 413 and a bit horsepower, but torque was down to 407. But past that, we were able to pick up some torque in the upper end of the range, but the peak torque was actually down slightly. But what you're going to notice when I throw up the graph here, the comparison of no spacer to the open spacer, the 1 inch, and by the way, the 1 inch was pretty much the best overall results we had versus a ½ inch, or I think an inch and a half we tried, if I remember correctly. But you're going to notice under 4,500 RPM, we lose quite a bit of torque. Slight horsepower drop, but a pretty good amount of torque. Just to compare here, numbers wise, I think it was upwards of 15 foot-pounds of torque, 14, 15 foot-pounds of torque, 10 horsepower down below. So under 4,500 RPM, the open spacer does give up quite a bit. So I like the fact that we picked up power top end with the open spacer. This thing was already making more power than expected, and seeing it creep up with the open spacer was nice. But what I did like was the drop in low end power. That under 4,500 RPM, everything seemed to take a pretty good hit with the open spacer versus no spacer. And honestly, if I was running this thing, if I had to make a choice, I'd probably run no spacer. It wasn't worth the trade-off, in my opinion, for a motor that's going to be running at this RPM range. So I thought, you know what, maybe the tapered combo is going to be the ticket. We have a 1 inch tapered combo here and a 2 inch. These are both from Speedmaster. Most of the testing we found the 2 inch was slightly better than the rest, but just so if you guys are wondering, you don't have the hood clearance, you're going to have very similar results with the 1 inch. But let's throw the tapered combo in there, and if you're wondering what that is, a lot of you guys have seen these, also known as the Super Sucker. It's like a 4-hole spacer mixed with an open spacer, so you kind of get a little best of both worlds. At least that's what we hoped. So let's throw the tapered combo spacer on there and see what kind of results we got. Just when I thought the tapered combo was going to be the one, to my surprise, it did almost exactly the same thing as the open spacer, except it picked up a little bit more torque at the top end. But honestly, very, very similar results. The carb jetting ended up being almost identical. So really, the tapered combo versus open wasn't really much different. So I went out to the dyno cell and I decided, let's try to flip the tapered combo. I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but the tapered combos are designed for the holes to be pointing up towards the carburetor. Some of them will actually be engraved and they'll say carb side, this side, and then this is the manifold side, the open side. But I thought, you know what, this is a dual plane intake. Let's try to flip this thing upside down so it has this radius sort of thing going down into the dual plane intake. Let's see what kind of results that gives. Our tapered combo spacer flipped upside down with the center point pointing towards the carburetor and the 4 holes down towards the dual plane intake was the magic ticket for this combination. If you haven't done this before on a dual plane intake, I encourage you to try it. The jetting changes are no different than when we were running open spacer or the tapered combo flipped this way. The jetting was almost identical. But we end up picking up power where we lost power before, and underneath where we would normally lose a lot of power with an open spacer, we did not see that drop. So there was only real benefits. We had that same slight drop in peak RPM than we did with the open spacer or the tapered combo the other way. So it made peak power, I think this time at 5,900 RPM. We made a peak of almost 414. We made peak torque of 415 as well, but take a look at that torque curve, how it shifted it and carried almost 415 foot-pounds of torque now for almost 1,000 RPM, which it did before. This is a real big power improvement and just change to the curve in just the spacer. So we could have the same or similar results with a 1 inch taper combo, the same thing with a point. There's also 1.5 inch tapered combos depending what you can fit on your application. But I encourage you guys to try this every dual plane. Don't put it in the traditional method. Try it upside down on a dual plane intake and then check out your results. Because this engine really liked the combination of the tapered combo pointing up towards the carburetor. Alright, so the final results of the day. I had one more trick up my sleeve that I wanted to try, and one more thing I wanted to talk to you guys about. Oil pressure on this thing. All day we noticed that oil pressure was high. This is a standard pressure, high volume oil pump. The bearing clearances are on the looser side, I would say. So oil pressure, I would expect to see with a hot oil, you know, upwards of maybe 70 psi on the up in the RPM range. We were hitting maybe 90 to 92 psi of oil pressure, which is on the higher side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the pump off and make sure that the pressure relief valve or something in this pump, something's not stuck in the pump on this brand new melting pump, causing us issues. I'm thinking maybe that's what it was. Oil pressure that high, a little hard on stuff, and it's honestly unnecessary. It's just costing us power and increasing wear. So I'm going to look into that. But there's a little bonus I wanted to tell you guys about. So we were running 530 conventional all day with some additive in it for break-in. But I wanted to try, once we got everything else tuned up, we had our flipped spacer, combo spacer, we had the timing set, the carb set. I wanted to try a 020 synthetic oil, almost like a little bonus test on this thing compared to our 530 conventional. And it did pick up a little bit of power. So I'm going to just throw up a graph here. With our 020 synthetic oil, so lightweight oil, we had a new horsepower peak of 418.22 horsepower. With the lighter synthetic oil, we picked up a little bit of top end power. Basically everywhere else in the curve there was no change, but the top end, it did extend the RPM range and picked up a little bit of power. So our new peak power for this thing, and we're sitting around 415 foot-pounds of torque and 418.22 horsepower. So not bad for a little budget build. This is definitely the cheapest horsepower I've ever built. The tapered combo spacer, that was the biggest takeaway of the day on this combination, was the flip tapered combo spacer. I encourage you guys to try that on your dual plane intake and see what kind of power you guys get out of it. Try it the regular way, try it flipped upside down. Every combination is different, every intake reacts a little differently. But definitely something worth trying, as the results were really, really good on our 350 Vortec build here. So don't forget guys, please like and subscribe. Please comment below if you've tried this trick and if you're going to try this trick. And maybe let me know what kind of other stuff you want to see coming up on. We have some more engines that we're going to be dynoing in the next couple months. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you later.